Hello.
Hello.
Am I the first?
No, we've got about 13 people so far on the call.
Well, that's not bad.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. I'm just waiting for a few more people to come on.
Hello, have you got me okay?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just wait for a few more people. Tom? Tom, can you hear me?
He just put a message on the screen saying he'd be a couple of minutes.
Unmute. Right. There we are. Good. I thought there was a way to see 9 or 16 people, or is that on computer only?
Computer only.
Oh, right, okay.
Computer only.
Right. Right. Tom's in. Good. Hi, Peter.
Hi.
Right.
Do I have time to get a glass of water?
All right. I'm gonna. Sorry. I'm gonna get my tea.
It's
We've
not
got half
working on
an.
the YouTube at the moment.
That's what
We've
I've...
got- Sorry, I was going to say we've got half an Anthony at the moment.
Okay. First of all, can folks hear
That's it.
me?
Yes. What about our speakers?
I think
Yeah.
they're coming at their proper time slots. So Adele is joining us at 7 and Simon for 7:30. I need to make sure if I can get the YouTube working for the moment. And that's why I'd like Tom to come back. Tom, I don't seem to have the live stream working. Can you just check whether you can see the live stream on YouTube?
No, not unless I unplug.
Anybody see the live stream working?
Yeah, it says you're live,
I know it says I'm live, but
but it just says Zoom host in black.
well, that's okay because I have just changed my name. All right, I'll change my name.
Okay, hold the feedback. No, it's working. Yeah, your face is up on it.
Oh, so it is working.
Now it's showing us Anthony walking around. Yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah.
Right. So I know we've got Barbara on the call. What I'm looking at is our participants on Zoom is currently at 15 plus Barbara 16. We need 2 more people to be quorate for the AGM.
Back in a moment.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, great. Okay, I've got a new headset and I wasn't sure if it was working or not. It tells me I'm muted, but I'm not. Obviously.
It is working.
Thank you.
Let me wait one more moment and see if we have any more participants.
How
I'm
do,
gonna-
how do you get more than, I've got 9 faces. How do you get more?
Well, there's usually on, depends if you're on a computer or on your iPad, but you can scroll through and see more faces,
Oh, right.
hopefully.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Yes, you can usually do that. Let me just double check. I know.
Just learned something.
Yes. Let me just check here.
How do you get it playing on the YouTube then? I can't do that. It just says waiting on mine.
Does it? Tom, what
Yeah.
have you seen?
Let me go back in.
No, I'm afraid I haven't got an extension lead. Not unless
Technology.
I'm one that's a printer's plugged into.
No, yeah, I'm on the YouTube page and I'm seeing myself, which is weird.
Really?
Yeah.
I can't see it because it says
It's
that.
about
Just says
20 seconds behind where we are, but it's on there.
Said that to you on reach. Could you not sit here? My phone reaches just about, and I can give you. I don't know what. I can give you my metal one.
All right, I'm just trying to look at the YouTube once more, and then we'll start in just a couple minutes. Okay, folks?
I've got 16 joined up that I can see. Not all have pictures, but there are 16 people on there.
Yes, and we have Barbara as 2. Is anybody else with someone else on the call? Because Barbara's a second person.
Still don't think it's going to work.
Well,
how many do we need for
that one there.
We need 18.
Okay. Well, I've got it as participants 16 plus Barbara, that's 17. So I think we're only watching.
One.
Yes.
It says there are 3 waiting on YouTube, so but obviously you won't be able to see who those people are. So anything.
Oh, one of them's me.
But is YouTube working, Tom?
Yeah, I've just posted the link in the chat. It's working fine for me. Although I'm keeping it muted because I don't want to create a feedback loop into this chat.
No, I understand that. So let's just check one more. If we get one more participant, then we should be.
Doesn't reach at all? Okay, well, I always struggle. It's always a struggle, but I do manage to go. Okay, I'll have to unplug the printer.
Just checking whether I think Geraldine has sent apologies. Unfortunately, then she would have made would have made the extra person.
But we only have to be quorate when we're taking any votes. I don't think it matters about being quorate when you start the discussions, as it were.
Okay. Alan, would you mind calling Geraldine and see if she would join? I just spoke with her a short while ago.
I don't think I have a number.
All right.
Yeah, communicated with by phone.
It's easy to. You can have the meeting. It just means you have to defer any decisions to a future meeting where they can be ratified.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah. So I'm worried it's quite people will drop off YouTube if they don't think we're starting.
Right. Okay, we're actually now quorum. A few people have joined by phone.
Okay,
So
good.
we can kick off now. So that is super. So sorry about that as a start to the meeting. So let me see what I've got here. Right. So first of all, good evening and welcome to the 2020 annual general meeting for the Milton Keynes Bus Users Group. This is our first meeting using video conferencing. So obviously we're having a few technical glitches, but please bear with us. I'm Rebecca Kurth. I'm chair of Mkbug, and joining me this evening from the officers and committee, we have Alan Francis, vice chair. We have Tom Walker, the treasurer. We have from the committee, Peter Ballantyne, Vanessa McPake, Chris Rowe. I believe Norman Dennis is phoned in. Is that right, Norman?
Yeah, I'm on
Yes.
Zoom or whatever. I'm here.
Fantastic. All right. So, and I've had apologies from Geraldine and Leonard Lean. Have I missed any committee or officer members?
No.
No. Okay, that's great. So first of all, just a few not technical, but housekeeping points. One is, could I ask that everyone turn their microphone off, and also to turn your video camera off if you know how to do that, because that makes the transmission online better for everybody. So I'll just wait a moment for folks to do that. Let's see, get this up here. I also want to make people aware that, as we talked about at the beginning, we are streaming this meeting on YouTube, which means that anything you say effectively is being broadcast into the public domain. So bear that in mind. During the meeting, if you have, you want to say something or want to ask a question, and there'll be particular points which we've allocated for that, then turn your video on and wave your hand, or if you're on a microphone, then speak up, and that way you can ask a question or make a comment. All right. So let me just check. I had some notes here for the meeting, which I just want to double check that I've covered the key parts here. So we've had apologies, as I mentioned, from Geraldine and from Leonard. And the first item for the agenda is the minutes from the last meeting. So Geraldine would normally give these, but I will just present them. I sent them all yesterday as an attachment to everyone. I've had no feedback. Geraldine is joining us. So unless I see anybody waving their hands or otherwise indicating differently, I'm going to say that we've accepted the minutes from the last AGM. All right, I'm scrolling through, and that looks like everybody is fine with the minutes. On my big screen, I'm only seeing Peter Ballantyne's iPad. Are everybody else seeing me? Hopefully you are seeing me. Okay. Moving on to the next item on the agenda, we've got the chair's report. And I'd really like to begin by thanking the Mkbug officers and committee members for volunteering their time to promote the interests of bus users in Milton Keynes. In particular, I would like to thank Geraldine as outgoing secretary, and Peter Ballantyne as outgoing editor of the newsletter, and Leonard Lean as outgoing committee member for their contributions. And for those three, it's been over many, many years, and really appreciate the work and the contributions you've made. It's phenomenal. The past year has been obviously strange and difficult, a time for all of us. We were not able to hold our usual face-to-face mid-year members meeting in May, nor were we able to hold our regular committee meetings until July, when we switched them to video conferencing. I must say, though, that over the last 3 months, the committee has been working in overdrive, following the council's proposed changes to subsidized bus services in order to manage the financial impact of COVID-19. At a council meeting in September, Mkbug sought an amendment to the proposals, which resulted in the council setting up a DRT working group, which included Mkbug representatives, as well as representatives from parishes. We will hear more about the work of that group shortly from our guest speaker, Adele Waring. But I want to assure our members of 2 points. First, the committee recognizes the extraordinary situation we're in, and we are committed to working with the council to ensure that the proposed solution of demand responsive transport, or DRT, as it's called, meets the needs of users. It does mean that many of us have to learn how to use a new form of public transport, a new way of doing things like video conferencing here tonight. But we should all try to make it work and accept that there will inevitably be some hiccups. Second, though, we still believe that fixed bus routes are the backbone of our public transport network, and that DRT should be viewed as a way to complement bus services, particularly in areas or situations with low passenger demand. And we will hear more about bus services from our second guest speaker tonight, Simon Matheson. Finally, I want to take this opportunity to announce that due to the ongoing impact of COVID-19 on the lives of so many of our members, the committee has decided to waive the cost of a subscription to Mkbug for the coming year. This waiver applies to individuals and couples, but not to organizations. This decision, of course, will have an impact on our financial accounts, but we are confident that it will be manageable. We will also be seeking voluntary contributions in lieu of subscriptions. And speaking of financial accounts, I would now like to hand over to Tom Walker to deliver the Treasurer's report. Tom?
So I think Rebecca has sent out the PDF version of the report for everyone, so hopefully you've all got sight of that. It's the main thing to note with that, of course, is that because of COVID-19, we've not had much in the way of financial activity. A lot of our normal financial activity is room hire. And the main thing we've been doing is newsletter printing, really. We've not had much else going on. So there's a lot of empty columns in there. We did resolve at the committee meeting that we were going to move towards taking us away from a treasurer's account that we're currently on towards a community account. So the point of that being giving us the ability to receive and send back payments and do online banking. So that would massively liberalize what we're able to do financially. We're currently very hamstrung by the type of account we have, in that we can only raise checks essentially, and that's pretty much the limit of what we can do. So that's the main thing to note, really. And if there's any questions about items on the sheet, I'm happy to answer those.
I'm looking to see anybody have questions on the financial accounts. I'm looking to see if anyone's come off mute or turned the video on. I'm not seeing anything. So I'm going to say that then we've accepted the financial accounts. Thank you, Tom. Right, so the next item on the agenda is to seek approval of the proposed amendments to the Constitution, which were circulated to all members with the notice of the AGM. And the proposed amendments are as follows. I'm going to try to bring them up on screen. So bear with me a second. Let me see if I can find them. That's an interesting little challenge. I thought I had them easily accessible. Well, I'm going to share my desktop, which is a little risky, and see if I can maneuver to our as usual. I'm just trying to, all right, Adele's joining us. Yes, here we go. Can folks, I presume, see this on the screen now? It is just the summary of the proposed amendments to the Constitution, which were circulated with the original notice of the agenda, and also circulate the actual Constitution to folks as well. But most of the amendments are minor, and just to briefly go through them, we've expanded the meaning of bus to include other forms of shared public transport, including DRT and minivans. We'd like to change the name from chairperson to chair, deputy chair to vice chair. The Data Protection Act used to be as a sort of a footnote in the Constitution, and it really belongs in the main body, so we've moved that into Section 3. We've also added responsibility for data protection officer to the membership secretary role. And speaking of that role, we've split out what was previously in the Constitution a combined role of treasurer and membership secretary to 2 officer roles, and then change the references in the Constitution from 4 to 5 members accordingly. Now, the substantive changes are that we've reduced the quorum for the committee members from 2/3 to 1/3, and that's actually along with standard practice. In reality, is we almost always have all committee members joining us, but it really should be 1/3 as standard practice for committee members to be quorate. We've also added some wording to the quorum for the general meeting, because the way it's written in the Constitution currently, you would have to have 18 members. So like on tonight's Zoom meeting, we were looking for those 18 members. It literally says 18 members. We have 100 members right now, so 18, that's reasonable to set it. But in future, if our membership drops to say 20 members, to have a quorum of 18 is obviously too high. And so that's where we've added the wording, if the total membership is less than 60, then 1/3 of the members. So that would bring us back to the 18. So that's just to capture the situation if our membership drops low. And then the final change is to increase the vote to approve future amendments of the Constitution. So the Constitution says you need a simple majority. So that's what we'll have on tonight's vote. But in future, if we pass these amendments, we would have to have a 2/3 majority to amend the Constitution. So I'm going to stop there and check whether anybody has any questions or concerns. I have received nothing from members. I received one member who said they were happy with the proposed amendments. Okay, so unless I'm seeing, yes.
I wanted to ask the number of people. You said that there are quite a number of people at the moment. Do you know why they didn't come this evening by electronic form?
Yes. What I would say is that we have currently around 100 members, half of whom we send postal, information by post. We do not have email addresses. And so we assume that these are members who actually have limited electronic access. So in fact, we only have 50 members who currently can communicate with us digitally. So of the 50 members who are online, so to speak, almost half are on this call tonight, which I think is actually very good. The other thing to mention is that there may be members who chose to go onto YouTube. I don't know if Tom continues to monitor the YouTube viewing. YouTube is easier than Zoom, of course. So, but Zoom is the only way we can actually say we're quorate or not. So there may be additional members who are viewing the proceedings through YouTube. Any other questions? If not, then I am going to take it as accepting that we're going to accept the proposed amendments to the Constitution. So great. Let's see. We now move on to election of officers. We've circulated the nomination sheet yesterday. I will now, do I have that to show it on the screen? I will try to show that on the screen as well. So let me move on to my share screen again. And let's see. Meetings. I think I'm going to have to bring, I'm have to close, I think I have to bring this up fresh again. So you're now seeing my, well, the committee's electronic storage system here. And I'm trying to find where, here we go. So open up this folder. If anybody uses Google Drive, once you get the hang of it, it's pretty good, but it's hard to get the hang of it. Here's our nomination sheet. So I'm going to open that up. All right. I'll try to get it a little bit bigger. So hopefully everyone can see that. Yeah, so those are the nominations we've had. Since sending this out, we've had no one come forward in the meantime. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to formally stand down as chair and hand over to Alan Francis as vice chair to conduct the nomination and election for chair. So I'll stop sharing the screen. So Alan, over to you.
Okay, thanks very much, Rebecca. Do we have any nominations for the post of chair? If you just unmute yourselves and if you wish to make a nomination.
I would like Rebecca to continue.
Thank you.
Does that count as two? Because I did wave, but I don't know if that counts for anything.
Okay. Yeah, I can't see everybody all the time. I can only see about 6 people at once. So I can't be.
Oh,
so
right. Okay. So
I see people have nominated Rebecca. Does anybody wish to nominate anybody else? Okay, I will take silence as assent, as it were. So Rebecca is nominated. There's no other candidates. So Rebecca is the chair again for the forthcoming year. And I hand back to Rebecca to handle the rest of the elections.
Great. Thank you so much. And thanks for the nomination and the vote. I'm going to go back to sharing the screen once more. So what I'm proposing to do is rather than to walk through each of the other officer posts and the committee members, I would like to have someone nominate all of them en bloc. Do I have a nomination for everyone you see on this sheet from somebody?
Yeah. What about the parishes? There's obviously no name for that.
Right. We don't nominate that. I am in contact with the parish body, which is known as Mkbug, the Association of Local Council, and they have an AGM at the end of this month, and they will vote and elect someone to represent the parishes on the committee. So that's not for us to vote on, it's for them to vote on. So we just say we are going to have a representative coming to the committee in the end of the month from the parishes.
A question,
Right. Okay.
why is it that some places, some people are written as new? Does it mean that they just came now or?
Yes.
Okay.
So current meaning these are in a sense are incumbents, they've already been in post.
Yeah.
And then Chris Rowe and Mark Lombardo have said they would stand as new officers for secretary and membership secretary. And on committee, Geraldine, who had been secretary, is still happy to serve on the committee, but not as secretary. And we have no other than obviously a parish rep being put forward at the end of the month. We have no one else coming forward on the committee.
Okay, thank you.
So going back, are folks happy to have the people on the sheet be nominated? Is there anyone else who wishes to nominate someone else or to stand?
No, that's okay.
Okay. Not hearing anything else. So, and are we happy to then elect everyone you're seeing on this sheet to be an officer or a committee member for the coming year?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. So I'm taking that as also general acclamation for these new members. So thank you very much for that. And thank you for the new officers and committee, well, the new officers who have agreed to stand. That's brilliant. Now, let's see. That, I believe, concludes the business part of our AGM. And we'll now hear the presentations. And I wanted to briefly talk through, explain how we're going to run this part of the meeting, which is basically after each presentation, a member of the committee will have a conversation with the speaker, and will seek to clarify a number of points with the speaker and ask a number of questions, sort of in a dialogue with the speaker. And after that, there will be a general Q&A for participants on the Zoom. But hopefully a lot of your questions might have already been answered in the dialogue. And we're hoping that that will be a more efficient way to cover a lot more ground in questions than trying to figure out on the Zoom call who wants to ask a question and whatnot. So we're going to give that process hi Geraldine, a go right now. So I'm going to hand over to Geraldine in a second. I would just like to remind folks to remember to mute or put your videos on the camera off if possible. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Adele, who is the Transport Strategic Lead at Milton Keynes Council, and who has been leading the Council's process for switching subsidized bus services to DRT. So over to you, Adele.
Thanks, Rebecca. I apologize for not having any slides. I did actually have up a couple of things I was going to put on the screen, then I realized we're on Zoom and not Teams. So I have forwarded the map to Rebecca to circulate to everybody later. Essentially, as you know, obviously, since COVID, we've seen unprecedented times in the council, new financial pressures that we had no concept of prior to that, a massive drop in use of public transport, and ongoing uncertainty about what's going to happen moving forward with public transport. So we brought forward some plans that we'd been working on to move from fixed bus routes that were running with little usage at poor intervals, often more than half an hour between buses, and introduce demand responsive transport across Milton Keynes, wherever there isn't a commercial fixed route to provide the service. We've been working alongside Alan and Rebecca and others as we've developed the specification for this, and it's been to delegated decision both on the 29th of September, which had some call-ins, and again on the 10th of November, after those call-ins were resolved in mediation and further meetings and presentations have been held. The specification document is going to scrutiny on the 24th of November, so they'll get a chance for councillors across party to respond to that. I've also sent it today to the chair of the Disability Access Group to send feedback on, and I will forward it as it stands to Rebecca to circulate for comment. The proposal is to remove pretty much all subsidised bus services and move them across to demand responsive. We believe we can get better response times for people. So although you have to put in a call to get the vehicle out to you, if the response time for that is a maximum of 30 minutes, that's a lot better than bus services in a lot of areas. It'll go not quite door to door, corner to corner for most people. So it'll take you from quite close to where you are to very close to where you want to be. We're looking at an average walk at about 250 metres. The British standard for bus stops is about 400 metres. So if you are on a commercial bus route, it will simply direct you to the commercial bus route if you live, or if your whole trip is achievable on that route with minimal disruption. So it won't compete with or undermine the commercial bus services. And we are requiring a percentage of electric vehicles and a percentage of wheelchair accessible vehicles as part of the contract. This is DRT is generally, well, it's being delivered at the moment on the area that used to be covered by the Service 28. That was an emergency contract and doesn't represent the sort of the final solution. But that's being delivered under a private hire vehicle license rather than a public service vehicle license. So we thought it was important that we mandate a certain number of wheelchair accessible vehicles. And sort of that's really the summary. We'll be making the move on the 1st of April, network wide. We're learning everything we can from the 28 at the moment and smoothing out those any issues there, so that when it does land on the 1st of April, it's a really good, well-rounded service. We weren't expecting to have that opportunity. We weren't expecting to be putting DRT in anywhere before the 1st of April. But as it's happened, we're going to make the most of it. And really try and get everything we can from that so that we deliver the best service we can on the 1st. So, Chris.
Hi.
Hi.
All right.
Thank you very much for spending time with us this evening. We do appreciate it. I wonder if you could put a little bit of flesh on the bones.
Yes, of course.
First of all, not everyone will know what demand responsive transport is. Can you just very briefly describe it?
Of course. So for demand responsive transport, rather than turning up at the bus stop and waiting for a timetabled bus on a schedule that follows a set route, you contact the operator and say, I need a vehicle, and they send it out to you. It comes when you need it. So you summon it then rather than, or close to the time that you need it, rather than with a taxi, which you might book well in advance. And it will tell you where you'll be collected and when, and it'll give you details about your driver and everything so that you know you're getting into the right vehicle.
Right. Okay. Thank you. And is the booking going to be done by telephone, did you say?
We're having a variety of options. There's an app, which the smartphone app, which is super quick and easy to use. We are also going to be offering a full telephone booking service. So any hours that it runs, it will have phone booking as part of the contract. We are also looking at options for people who may not be carrying a phone at the time or have easy access to a phone. So we're looking at things like, can we do partnership working? So obviously we can work with places like Into and have their help desks make calls for people.
Right.
There are proposals around, are there chains like Pret, say, that would also act as phone buddies for emergencies and things like that, for people caught out without a phone. We're looking at the smart ticketing machines that are just going in now on street to see if they can also act as booking kiosks. People can just walk up to. There will only be 11 of those, but they are going in at key public transport points because they are there for public transport ticketing. So
it won't just be the city centre?
No, there are a few of those. I can circulate a list of the locations we're planning for those.
That would be helpful, thank you. So you book an entire journey, do you, which might be a mix of DRT and commercial services?
Long term, at the moment, if you book a journey, the whole thing will be delivered on DRT. In the longer term, we may move to a system where if one end of your journey can be delivered by commercial service very well, but the other end can't, we might transfer you between them. But at the moment, with the patronage levels, even pre-COVID, that we've had traditionally in Milton Keynes on our subsidised services, we're aiming to deliver a full journey.
But I understood you to say that if the commercial service would cover the journey, or presumably the majority of the journey.
We're looking at directing people to the commercial services where both ends of it are covered. So if you're 400 metres or less from the start and finish of your journey on a commercial service, we will be putting in some stuff around restricting numbers of changes and additional timed journeys as well, so that we're not, leaving people for an hour and a half in the rain to then spend 2 hours travelling when the journey should have taken 20 minutes. Right. So we will be putting in some provisos around that, but it's a balance between making sure people get a good service and not competing with or undermining the commercial services.
Right.
And we'll be working with the technical team on which Rebecca has been really supportive and helpful will be continuing through the delivery of the service. It's not just setting up the spec. That will continue, so we can adapt and learn as we go.
Yeah, good. Did I understand you to say that the maximum wait would be 30 minutes?
In urban areas, the maximum will be 30 minutes. In very rural areas, the maximum will be 60 minutes. That is the absolute maximum. The average is generally a lot lower. And that would be sort of a KPI. We wouldn't expect to see any journeys waiting more than 60 minutes. I would say we're talking about places where the bus service is every 2 hours or none at all for that sort of level of wait.
So even in that situation, it would be an improvement.
Yes, especially for the people with none at all.
Yes. And this would cover too the sort of the evening sessions and the weekends when the commercial services at the moment are run by subsidised buses.
Yes. Yes, we're seeing the services running 6 till 11 weekdays and Saturdays, and we've probably around 10 till 4 on Sundays, although we might expand that a little bit to allow for people getting to and from work on a Sunday. And then again, we'll be reviewing that as we go. So we'll be seeing if there's a particular area where actually we've got a lot of shift workers, but there isn't much travel at the peak times in the morning. We might be able to move some of those vehicle hours around so that it covers those shift changes and things like that.
Right,
and this is one of the things that you can't do when you put in a fixed route bus service. We go out to tender for a service and that's what you get. And this is one of the things about DRT that's really exciting to me, is that being able to work with major employers and things like that to make sure that we give that accessibility for jobs.
One of the issues that I'm aware of is that people who have restricted mobility, they're not wheelchair users, but they just take a long time to walk to places. What would happen if the offer of the transport was too short a time for them to be able to get to the bus stop? Would they be able to negotiate that, or say, I don't want that time, but I would like a later time?
They'll probably get a couple of offers. So you'll probably get, this is the vehicle nearest you.
Right.
And then another offer shortly afterwards. Alternatively, you can always say, no, I don't want that ride, and then try again a minute later, and you'll get a new offer with a slightly different timing. The other thing is that they will be able to message within the app or on the phone to say, I'm not a wheelchair user, but I have mobility issues, so they get a suitable vehicle.
Right, good. You said that the average walk would be 250 metres, I think. Are you setting a maximum in the spec?
Yes, we're setting a maximum walk of 500 metres. That does allow for people phoning from the middle of a park. So we have some significant open spaces in Milton Keynes. So the expectation is no one would be asked to walk more than 400 metres. We're allowing a little leeway so that if people do decide that as they start to walk out of the middle of their football match in a park somewhere, they're going to message from there. It does allow for the fact they're quite a distance from the road at that point. We will also allow a little bit of leeway on the maximum again in the most remote rural areas where people haven't had bus services or have had very, very poor bus services, just so that we're not expecting the drivers to go down and find a house down a long drive or something like that.
Okay. Can we talk money in a number of different ways? First of all, is there a financial savings target here? Are you aiming to save money? Are you able to say what that is?
We are expecting to about halve what it's costing us at the moment. So at the moment we are spending as an authority, or this year we'll spend 2.9 million. And that is likely to go up in future if we stuck to the traditional fixed route model. We've seen some quite significant increases in contract prices. So we are expecting to about halve that, and for the entire subsidised network to cost us about 1.5 million moving forward.
And how much will a journey cost? Do you know? Is that specified in the spec?
We're anticipating at the moment that we will charge £3.50 at peak rates and £2.50 at off peak. to encourage those who can journey at different times to do so, so that it flattens the curve a little bit and makes the service more sustainable. We are looking at whether or not we can do anything with season tickets and things. I genuinely don't know at the moment. We don't know what the price points are for that to work, but it is something we're exploring.
Will the concessionary passes be valid?
Concessionary passes will all be valid. We may, if it becomes necessary, put some caps on so that we don't have people doing sort of 80 trips a week. So there may be some limitations around that, and the older person's pass will be post 9:30 as it is on the bus now.
Yes.
But concessions will be accepted.
You talked about
That was
sorry.
Sorry, that was an interesting one, because we went to the DFT to confirm that they were part of the concessionary scheme, and they came back and went, no, they're not. So we've made the choice as a council that it's important to continue concessions.
Yeah, yes. I think in terms of acceptability, that must be right.
What about for children? Sorry, I was just thinking for children.
At the moment, we're planning on taking the all-in-one. We are reviewing the all-in-one in terms of the exact pricing and things like that moving forward from next year. But there's no change proposed to it at the moment, and it would be accepted on the vehicles.
So you talked about peak and off-peak fares. Have you defined what peak and off-peak times are?
Not precisely. We are, obviously, the morning peak is reasonably predictable even now. It is still generally sort of 7 till 9-ish. But we are seeing some flattening out of that, and we are seeing some flattening out in the evenings. But we will be looking at vehicle capacity and the current trends. One of the really useful things about having the DRT in for the 28 at the moment is it's giving us some really good data already. And combining that with what we're seeing on the network generally, will pin those periods down quite precisely. But they wouldn't be longer than traditional peaks. We're not going to extend them with the extension, but it's just making sure it's the right times.
Right. When people do have to pay, how will they pay?
You can pay through the app or over the phone. We're looking to provide devices to use the Mkbug card. So people will be able to preload that and pay as they board with that. We haven't resolved around cash yet. We obviously don't want drivers carrying cash, and the closure of the Arriva Cube does mean that we don't have a cash top-up point for the Move card at the moment. So it's something we're looking at, but I don't have an answer on cash at the moment. The Mkbug card does mean that people can top up with a variety of cards, including chip and pin, though. Not just contactless. So people with step accounts and things like that can still preload their card.
So does that mean that people don't have to have an account, but they can pay per journey, pay as they go, effectively? Yeah. Right. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. You referred to the 28 pilot, as it were. What lessons have you learned from that so far?
We've learned that the electric vans that are currently in the city are a little bit high. Probably not higher than buses, but they don't have the ramps, and they aren't always using bus stops. So we're having some of the problems, and there are problems that people face when they're using hail and ride as well with traditional buses, that it can be quite a big step up. So we've been making fixes to that. We've learned that there are a percentage of people who are definitely using the phone line and prefer the phone line. But usage has increased really quickly, and the feedback we've been having has been quite good. We have heard, I think there have been a couple of people who've wanted some reassurance and have phoned the line to get Viavan to walk them through downloading the app and using it for the first time, but they've made that number available for that purpose. And the engagement, I think, once we'd actually been out to the parishes and the wards and done the presentation, there was a lot more direct engagement with it, and we're now sort of trying to keep in touch with the people using it and get the feedback as much as we can from the parish councillors and the people using it.
Yeah, thank you.
It's in week 3 at the moment, so I'm sure there will be many more things for us to learn.
Indeed, yes, that's right. but that's good. We're aware that a number of DRT schemes elsewhere, which were mentioned in promoting this, have ceased. Arriva Click in Liverpool, for example, and Go Sutton in London were put forward as examples of how it can be done, but they've ceased. How confident are you that it will work in Milton Keynes?
I think Go Sutton was a pilot, very much so, with a limited run in the first place, and that it has been very successful, and that the councillor would really like to see it brought in properly as a permanent thing rather than as an experiment. So that's been really encouraging. The Liverpool one I'm not as familiar with. I don't know whether Simon would know. I know that Arriva Click in Leicester is developer funded. So there will be a question of whether or not it's commercially viable or ends when the developer funding runs out. We're going into this very much from the point of view of we know it's not commercially viable. But equally, we don't want to be in the position of saying, well, we're only going to put on developer funded buses in future, because that doesn't give a network wide service. So, you know, we're reasonably comfortable. We're getting, you know, we've done some modelling. We're reasonably comfortable with getting this as right as we can, and that it is a viable way forward. We're also flexible. You know, we're going to keep the tech group going. We're going to keep learning as we go, and we're going to look for the points at which we need to change the nature of the service a little bit. So you referenced earlier moving people from a DRT vehicle onto a commercial route.
Yes.
And there will come a time when we can start doing that. We're looking to work on some quality bus corridors and improved partnership with the operators so that we can deliver a better core infrastructure on the commercial network, so that we can start to actually make that move. And that brings the efficiency of the vehicles up. As Rebecca's covered previously, it can do a great deal. And that sort of movement we'll be monitoring closely to see when that becomes viable and make sure that we're ready to take advantage of that change. So we see this very much as something that grows as part of the long-term strategy, not as we're putting in a solution, this is the solution, and if it's the wrong solution, that's the end of it. No, I do believe it's the right solution, and I do believe we've done the work that shows that, but we are also seeing it as an adapting solution as part of a broader network plan.
I was going to ask you if there's a plan B, but what you're saying is there's a variation of plan A, effectively.
There's some tweaks.
Yeah.
And I mean, one of the things we want is to say, you know, to get the data and go, well, actually, you know what, bus operators, you're missing an opportunity. There's dozens of people an hour taking vans from the end of your route here to over here, which would just be like 2 stops on for you. Extend your route. You know, this is the sort of information we can get from this that we can't get from fixed buses. We can't find out where people actually want to go.
No.
Only where we're willing to take them.
Well, thank you very much. It's been good to have that conversation. I'm going to bring others in if they wish. Anthony's got his hand up. Perhaps you'd like to ask your question.
Number one, especially, I've got a few points really. Number one, especially with COVID, on one occasion I made a point of using the 18 because it then took myself and my girlfriend off the 6. So it made space for a couple of extra people to board the 6 who have no choice of using the 18. And I think demand responsive gets rid of that, because I wouldn't have been, if the 18 had been demand responsive, I wouldn't have been able to use it. And what about getting on a bus and saying, I want to go to Olney, please? So when I get on the bus, the driver radios through and there's a demand responsive vehicle at Newport to take me to Olney.
When you get on the demand responsive vehicle, it will just take you to Olney.
Yeah, but not if I'm boarding in Milton Keynes. I don't want to replace my journey on the bus from
Central right, I see.
Newport.
So when you get off the bus at Newport, message for a vehicle, or you message for a vehicle when you're getting close to where you get off at Newport, and say I'm coming close to Newport, and I can put through a request for a vehicle, and it'll be there well, it'll tell you when it'll get there and where to meet it.
Okay. I'm thinking
but
about
in
the
terms
driver's
of
deal. The driver, I say to driver Olney, he says okay, and he radios through.
It's not going to be quite
that
that
not
integrated at this point, no. At the moment, it would be two separate journeys with two separate operators. When we get to, as we develop towards a transfer network, we may get to a point where it is you're offered an end-to-end journey, and you board your bus and you get on your car at the other end, your van at the other end. But it's not quite there yet. In regards to getting off the 6 or taking the 18 to make space on the 6, we just sends more vehicles. So
right, okay,
good. Yeah, thank you. I think Vanessa was indicating. Do you want to?
Sorry to interrupt, Chris. I see Richard Cousins had his hand up for quite a
Indeed.
while. Sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, Richard then.
Yeah, I was just going to say, is there a list of routes that you're planning? I mean, is it literally every subsidised route? Because that is pretty much most routes in Milton Keynes, isn't it? At some point of the day.
it is. I have got a list and a map which shows the remaining commercial routes. It's not a perfect map. It is a work in progress, but it gives a reasonable indication of where there are commercial routes running and where they will continue. Yes, there are a lot of routes that have a partial subsidy on them, and most of those are being withdrawn. The ones that are being retained are the 3333A, because it's partially paid for by Northamptonshire, the tiny bit of the 21 that we subsidise, and the tiny bit of the 41 that we subsidise. But I will send through the list. That's no problem.
Yeah, thank you. Next was Ian Layden and then Francois.
What happened to me?
Oh, sorry, Vanessa. Yes, you're back. You're
Hey,
back
Vanessa.
on screen. Let me take Vanessa first because she was first.
Right. Thank you. It's a very quick question. I thought that was very good, Adele. Thank you. It's the Sunday services. Doing 10 till 4 won't be long enough because the old towns, the shops are open 10 till 4, but in the new city areas, they're open 11 till 5. So I do think your Sunday service needs to be 9 till 6. There are many people, certainly I know from the supermarkets in Bletchley, who get buses at 9:30. They're allowed in the shops before 10 o'clock, plus the staff, as you mentioned. So you'll need to just extend those hours on a Sunday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Right, Ian, please.
Yes, I'm a parish councillor with West Bletchley. The couple of people around here have spoken to me about the number 28 and the removal of that and the replacement. Now the problem I've got when I'm looking at the way this has been communicated, there are notices have been put up in the bus shelters, but all that notice says, it tells you that it's been withdrawn and it gives you a web address. So somebody turning up there has got to then look on the website in order to work out what to do. Now, it's, as we've heard earlier on, that half the members of this group don't have a lot of sort of electronic access. A lot of older people are not able to just turn up there with a smartphone with the internet on it and go and look this up. Now, I asked a while ago the Milton Keynes Council if they could put a more informative notice on the bus shelters, the ones that like the information that's on the website with the phone numbers and the times that's available, but it's still not done. And I've had one person was only found out about this when she went to use the bus, and the web address was no use to her. And I also heard that there are people in the Lakes Estate who are walking long distances or using taxis because they don't know about this service or how to use it. So are you able to do something about that, please?
Yes.
I thought the phone number was actually going up on the bus shelters, because I raised this several weeks ago when we talked about the 28 being DRT.
But it's not there. The numbers are not there.
That's not good.
If I may.
Let's hear from Adele.
Sorry, both. Yes, I've checked in with my team member who's organising getting the posters updated, and I'm assured that's happening this week. We are also working with comms to set up a leaflet drop to the areas that don't have commercial routes running close to them as well. So there'll be door-to-door leafleting. I mean, I would stress we did have less than 3 weeks to deliver a service replacement for the 28. And we did say right from the beginning, there's going to be some work to do post-launch on this one. So we do take the point, and we would have liked to have got the posters out faster, so I apologise for that. And we are now working on making sure that there is actual leaflet dropping door to door in the areas that don't have other services within easy reach, so that they are aware of it and know how to access this.
Thank you. Francoise.
For the meantime, it's COVID. For example, I used to take the bus quite a lot every day. I'm retired, but I used to go to Central Milton Keynes for, shopping and other things. Now at the moment, I'm shielding and I'm afraid to take public transport. So I've not been using. My husband stopped using the bus for the same reason for the meantime. But obviously this thing will not go forever. There's a time COVID will be gone, and then you find that there is a jump in the use of buses. And I don't know whether you have taken that into account. Second point is that there are many people like my husband and others that have no smartphone, and they don't have a clue about going to the internet. They are too old or too, whatever for that. And so I find that it looks, listening to you, quite daunting, to deal with that. You call a vehicle, it looks like coming from the moon, that kind of thing. And I'm not too sure how it's going to work. I'm a bit skeptical. And then also I would like to know more about, is it only the 28th that is affected, or what are other buses maybe affected by that? Thanks.
At the moment, it's only the 28, because we offered extensions out to the 1st of April to operators, and the operator of the 28 declined on that route. It will be much more widespread from the 1st of April. We have a phone booking service at the moment, which at the end of this week will be, we will also have an out of hours phone booking service in place. It's one of the reasons we haven't done the leaflet drop yet. We've been waiting to get the out of hours set up and have a number for that. So you will be able to phone any time that the vehicles are running. You will be able to book them by phone, and that, it doesn't need to be a smartphone for that. I do take the point that there will be a jump at some point. We're expecting, I think generally across the bus network, it to be a series of jumps and plateaus as things change. We had a jump in September when the schools went back. And we do what we can to prepare for that. We work with the operators, and we'll be doing the same with this. We'll be working with the operator of the service, and we will be requiring, as part of the tender, for them to put forward a flexible plan to show how they will cope with significant changes in ridership, be it upward or downward, depending on the circumstances.
Adele, thank you very much for answering all our questions. So
very welcome.
I'm going to hand back to Rebecca now.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Adele and Chris. I think that worked very well. I'd now like to introduce our next guest speaker, who is Simon Matheson, who's the Reva's Area Managing Director for Midlands and Milton Keynes. Perhaps, Simon, if you would come off, I'll turn on your, there you are, and start to speak and introduce yourself too.
Yes, good evening. Can everyone hear me okay? Right, well, thank you very much for the invite. Very appreciative of that. Nice to join you, and interesting just hearing what Adele was saying as well. So I'm, as Rebecca says, I'm Simon Matheson, and I work for Reva, done 7 years, but just took over the Milton Keynes operation back in February. Feels like a long time ago now, but it's only February. So yeah, I cover quite a large patch stretching from the Welsh borders, well, down to Milton Keynes and the services we run, taking in Derby and Leicester as our sort of other main operations. But I'm also temporarily looking after part of our Essex operation as well. So I've got enough to keep me busy, put it that way. So I didn't know if you wanted to share the slides, Rebecca.
Yes. So here we go.
People will happy for me just to give some information I thought might be useful, and then more than happy to get involved in questions and comments and whatever else comes my way. So yeah, next slide would be great, please. So I thought it might just be useful to give people an update of who is what in Milton Keynes now, because it has changed, and I'm conscious that it's changed significantly since perhaps you were spoken to by, I think it was Lindsay last year. So you know who I am. So the general manager for Milton Keynes for us is called Luke Gilroy. He started just before I came on board in Milton Keynes. In January, I think he was appointed. He's the permanent general manager for Milton Keynes, and he comes from other parts of Arriva and started his career as a bus driver in London. And his family is steeped in London buses. His dad's a controller in London, so he knows about buses, and he's a young and sort of enthusiastic bus person, and he's been a good person to have on board. Alan Holmes is the operations manager, has come from our Leicester operation in March, so again very new, and it's his first managerial post, having worked in Leicester as a supervisor for some time. Russell Cato is the engineer manager, very experienced engineer manager. He came on board in June sort of time, something like that. So he's a new addition to the team, but again, long career in the buses with Arriva. And Colin Weeks, who probably the person you might see mostly, spends a lot of his time down in the central area at the station, managing the services and looking after customers. So Colin Weeks. And then Toby, who's been around a bit, and you might have come across that name before, is the area head of commercial, covering part of our operations in the areas of Leicestershire, Bedfordshire and Buckinghamshire. So it is a new management team, and of course we all came together right just before COVID came along. Some people came just after that. So it's been quite a interesting few months to get our heads around it. I think, from my point of view, coming in and taking over the depot in addition to my other areas, we had to do quite a lot quite quickly in those first few weeks of my tenure, and we did that, and we made some decisions to stabilise the depot, improve the operational performance, introduced new ways of communicating with the drivers. We held breakfast meetings with the drivers. I spent a lot of time in the depot, all times of the day and in the evening, helping out on the cleaning and things to really get our heads around it and really start to put in place some building blocks for some greater stability in the operation. But we knew there was a lot more to do, and then of course the impact of COVID came along, and that's been very hard for us. Obviously, patronage levels declined significantly. We were down to 15–12% of our normal patronage levels in sort of April sort of time, but it also did offer sort of an opportunity in a way, not one that I would really wanted to have taken, but it gave us an opportunity to press a little bit of a reset button on some of the things that we were doing in Milton Keynes at the depot and the way we operate, and that has been quite useful, I think, and will bear fruit in the future. The patronage levels now, we had reached sort of 55–57% of what we were carrying before, until we entered this second round of restrictions, which obviously patronage has dropped again to sort of mid-40%-ish. So it's not dropped as dramatically, and obviously it's not as dramatic a set of restrictions either. Weekends are much lower. Weekends 25–30%, although we've only had one weekend of it, 2 weekends, I lose track. So that's kind of where we are. Next slide, please. So, I mean, this is kind of what we're about, really, and what is it? Where do we see ourselves in Milton Keynes? And we see ourselves essentially as a key player for what happens in and around Milton Keynes, and we shouldn't lose sight of that. And I don't want the team in the depot to lose sight of that. And I've been really pleased with how we work with the council. I think that's becoming a strong partnership. I think it has been for some time, but I can only speak from my experience, and it's going to have to be, and COVID makes this even more the case, a proper partnership approach to what happens next. I talk to Adele and to Stuart Profit on a regular basis, and at different levels of my organisation, we have contact with different levels of the council, so that we can really work together for mobility in the city. And I'm very keen that we bring our best practice from across Arriva. We're we like to say we're a pan-European transport company. So there's some good things happen, you know, very exciting things happen in places that I would never have thought, Serbia, for example. And we need to get the best of that and bring it to Milton Keynes. And we set out some key ambitions that I think would just be worth running through to set the scene. So next slide, please. So some of these are more glamorous than others, but clearly when I came in, you know, it was obvious we had some unreliable vehicles and we need to do something about that, particularly for you bus people out there. The 12 Scania single deckers that we had that have spent nearly their whole life in Milton Keynes, but I went out for a number of journeys on some of those with my chief engineer, and it wasn't as good as I would hope for it to be. Now, COVID gave us the opportunity to take those vehicles out of Milton Keynes, along with a number of the other older vehicles. And at the moment, there's no sign of those coming back for anything other than school services and staff shuttles and things. So we've had some improvement on the fleet, which has been good. We want to work very much in partnership with the council to establish the 5 and 6 as a north-south mass rapid transit corridor. You know, looking at all aspects of that, from the vehicles to the stops to the interchanges, information, all the things you'd expect from a modern rapid transit service. And then the next stage of that will be to look at an east-west version of the same. You know, and I think we've talked about it with the council. There's opportunities with coachway and park and ride and things. So that's there as well. I'd like to see us get more integrated with the other things that are happening, and that would be the bike scheme. But I think that would also obviously going to be the DRT going forward. And Adele touched on that, how at some point you might be able to do a journey partly on DRT, partly on a commercial big bus, for want of a better expression. So I think there's some more work to be done on that. Next slide, please. Thanks. We very supportive of the move to electric buses or alternative fuels. Obviously, we had some electric buses. I wasn't involved in that scheme, and they're not here anymore. But that hasn't put us off. That just means you know, we've got some experience under our belt. We did support the all-electric bus town bid that was run, and I'm very keen to get involved with that. There's still discussions ongoing that have come out of that bid with the various partners that we hope to be able to do something to move that forward. If we can, that would be really exciting. The more that we get integrated and, you know, DRT comes along, that's going to have an app and things like that. It'd be good to have that brought into one place so that people haven't got to download, you know, various apps or remember various phone numbers. You know, it needs to be as simple and straightforward as possible. And perhaps we might be able to bring that together with all partners. Obviously, Milton Keynes is, you know, developing and growing as it always has done, and there's still more to come. So, you know, we like to think we're well tapped into those developments, whether that be just the housing or the industrial or things like East-West Rail. So we have a keen eye on those. And then finally, for this ambition slide, I always like to think of the families we support through the people we employ, and we shouldn't lose sight of the fact, you know, that we not only support people travelling around, but we support people in employment and the families that they have. So don't want to lose sight of that either. Next slide, please. So a bit more. So that was kind of ambitions and strategy. This is a bit more tactical, really. So, you know, obviously working with the council closely, DRT is very interesting to us. We obviously have a Riva click in a number of places, some of which have been a pilot, like Sittingbourne, which taught us all about DRT, and that came to an end. Some commercial ventures on click, like Liverpool, and I know that was a question earlier, but unfortunately for Liverpool, COVID has really done for that. Purely commercial venture, long-term ambition to invest in that and steadily grow patronage to a point that we would be able to say it was commercially successful, but COVID, the patronage has just disappeared, like everything, and unfortunately that strategy has not been able to be followed through. But we have now got Click in Leicester, which is developer funded, and it's just been started in Watford. That's been running for a couple of months, again involving the council and some funding. And we're just about to launch something in the north of Kent, in the Chatham sort of area, So there are more coming along, and obviously other operators have done similar. Oxford started and finished, and there's various others. So we're learning all the time about that. We are heavily reliant on government funding at the moment. It's called CBSSG. Can't quite remember what it stands for, but it is essentially supporting us in that we are a break-even operation at the moment. Obviously, we're a private business and we exist to make money and be able to invest on the back of carrying everybody. But at the moment, that isn't possible. So we are very reliant on that government funding, and we don't take that lightly. And it's not really where we want to be as a business, but that is the situation. We're on 8 weeks' notice for that to come to an end. But what we understand is going to happen is it's more than likely going to be replaced by recovery grants. They'll probably end up being called something else. But as we come through the COVID situation and get into more of the vaccine, if that's going to happen, then it'll be about how do we recover the levels of patronage as best we can. I don't actually think the level will be back at 100% of pre-COVID, but there'll be another set of funding with greater local authority involvement to try and encourage people back to the bus again. It's been touched on, and the Mkbug travel shop closed along with nearly all the others in the United Kingdom that have either had a UK-wide decision. I had them in Telford and Leicester and Southend, but they've all gone now, other than that there's a couple left for very specific reasons. But again, it was felt that with the COVID situation, they were essentially a cost to sell tickets that we could do cheaper in other ways through app, mobile phone, or on bus. The app and the website have been relaunched, and unfortunately not entirely successful, but I think, in lots of ways they are being worked through the different issues. I know Alan sent me something yesterday, so we reloaded the 5 and 6 last night to hopefully solve that problem, and I'm told that the missing stops are in now, but I was also asked just to ensure that people are on the new app and not still using the old app, because if people are still using the old app, that will give incorrect information. And then a bit on service 5 and 6 dwell times, which was also raised, but I was just really point out, really the lighter traffic means that buses are just being, I've never known buses run so punctually anywhere. And of course, going into these new restrictions, that's made it even lighter. But we just don't have the time and resource to keep changing schedules every time we're in or out of a different situation. So unfortunately, the price of increased punctuality at the moment is a bit of waiting around at timing points. Next slide, please. I think that's the last one. Yeah, there's a nice festive photo. Thought that might get us in the mood for a bit of festive cheer. Best photo I could find, actually. I quite like that one. Anyway, that was a quick run through. I hope that was okay. I'm sure the value is really in questions and comments, actually.
Tom, I'd like to hand over to you to sort of manage a bit of a conversation, and then obviously I'm seeing a lot of hands, so allow time for Q&A as well.
Sure. I think Alan's going to join me with a few questions as well in this first section, and then we'll go to everyone else after that. The first thing I just wanted to ask about this 5-6 sort of getting towards MRT concept. Like, can you give us a bit more of an idea of what that looks like? Because you've done, Sapphire on that before. You've done this kind of high spec model before. Are you going for higher frequencies or larger vehicles, or a different, how are you moving it more towards being an MRT route?
I think what we would mean by that is that it would be very, very simple, straightforward to use at a high frequency, where the frequency is as consistent as possible through as much of the journey as possible. So you're not necessarily diving off down every little back street, and not that 5 and 6 do that necessarily. I would imagine that you have a much higher quality of stop infrastructure, shelters, perhaps other facilities at those stops, bike racks, or electronic information, places to plug in, recharge your mobile phone. Some of these things exist now. And I think from a vehicle point of view, you'd probably have to say it would be something more like a tram sort of vehicle, to just provide that sort of more of a feeling of a sort of semi-permanent, bit of transport infrastructure. Simplified fares as much as possible. I guess trying to make it the real model bus route, I suppose, but clearly define it as something a bit different.
Cool. Okay, I have two others I wanted to ask. Firstly, we've heard from Adele about the withdrawal of the subsidised routes. Are you going to be looking, sort of setting COVID aside really, are you going to be looking at opportunities where you could amend some of your routes to potentially pick up a few of the areas that might be left unserved by that?
Yes, we will be. And I think we have some ideas already that have been talked about. And the opportunity to just, I don't want to overly worry people because it sounds more dramatic than I mean it to be, but just to realign bits of the network that maybe that we can pick up a bit of extra that we wouldn't have done necessarily otherwise. We will take those, but we will do it very much in partnership with Adele and the council, and then take it from there.
Okay, and lastly from me, and I'll hand over to Alan after this and then to everyone else. There's been a couple services that were withdrawn at the start of lockdown that haven't rematerialized yet. There was a sort of a reduction and then a return to what had been, but some things didn't come back. And personally, I'm affected by the west end of the 300 to Westcroft, and I think there's a couple of others which other members might be able to speak to. Are those coming back at some point, or is that have you permanently decided to adjust those?
We haven't made any permanent decisions on those, and it would depend very much on patronage levels coming back, really. The fact that they're not back yet does give you some indication about what we think about the potential. I mean, if they were better used sections, they'd be back by now, but no final decision. I guess we'd probably look to make a final decision at the same time as the change in the tenders and the introduction of DRT.
Does Alan have anything you want to say before we go to general?
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, a couple of sort of things, partly following on from Tom's questions. Looking at the situation next April, when the tendered services are withdrawn and DRT is introduced, quite a few of your commercial services have got sort of tendered additions to them. Sometimes that might be an evening service or a Sunday service, or sometimes it extends a bit further, like say to Newton Lees, a housing estate where just some end part of the journey is tendered. Are you going to sort of cease to operate the tendered bits, or might you consider keeping some of those on as part of the commercial service?
Yeah, some will be kept on as part of the commercial service, but probably in some different way. Or we might choose to do some bits at certain times of day rather than necessarily all day or every single day, if you know what I mean. So yeah, there'll be a bit of a mixture, but it's not just a flat, if it's currently tendered, we won't be doing it come April.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
So for example, Newton Lees, we have a solution where we think we could serve Newton Lees differently.
Okay.
So we're just working through that at the moment.
Right. Okay. That's good to know, because obviously, potentially large areas we're going to be left without services. Yeah. I know DRT will sort of step in, but for volumes, we obviously really do need the buses. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And what about? You sort of hinted, you said you might realign some of the existing network to sort of pick up. I'm thinking about some of the other non-Arriva services that are tender services that are being withdrawn. Are you looking to possibly take on some of those routes as well?
No, not necessarily. I think I was more thinking about, I think there's some opportunities in Bletchley to better on the 5 and 6 to serve. Is it Queensway, I think I'm talking about? Yeah. I think there's, depending on what happens in Newton Lees, there's some work going on about the various wiggles the one does as it moves its way back up towards central Milton Keynes. Things like that, I suppose, is what I mean more than anything else.
Right. So it's tweaks to existing. Yeah. Right. Okay. Thanks. Yeah. And on the thing about long dwell times, padding out timetables, in a way, that's an answer to a problem that we don't have anymore. Well, that, you know, at the moment, it was timekeeping, particularly on 5 and 6, was a major problem last year, but and it was mostly because of traffic. You know, different bits of road, different times of day, and so on, but particularly around Station Square, because virtually every bus service goes in and out of Station Square, and that was getting heavily congested for 2 or 3 hours in the evening peak. Once COVID came along, all that congestion went away, and that was around shortly after that was when you added the longer dwell times. So, you know, unfortunately, when the problem was there, the solution wasn't. When the problem went away, suddenly the solution. But it's pretty obvious that traffic levels are not going to get back to 100% of what they were for months, possibly years. And in particular, you know, the Station Square holdup was caused by rail commuters, and people have gone back to rail even less than they've gone back to bus. So it's a long time before we're going to see the kind of problem we had in Station Square. So I know you can't, as you said, change timetables every month, you know, every time we go in and out of lockdown, but you know, would urge you to consider the reducing that dwell that's just been introduced in Station Square, because it's not doing anything useful, and it's an inconvenience. And well, it must cost you to have a bus sitting there for 6 minutes doing nothing as well. So
yeah, ironically, of course, the timetable we're running now was designed and introduced from April to counter the very problems you were just saying had existed pre-COVID. And what a happy world that would have been. So yes, we're very aware of it, and it's happening all the way from, in my patch, Wrexham to Aylesbury. So it's just a question of when to press the button to introduce the new set, and how often. Try not to divert the resource we've got in the scheduling team, because they're doing a lot of, well, what do we now need to do because of where we are with patronage levels? And if they only ever get to 80% or whatever, what will the network look like? So there's a lot of what if work that we'd have to park just to do a lot of, right, sort these schedules out for now. And it's just a balance. It's just a balance. So we are aware of it. And if we got the opportunity, we would do something about it. But I'd be surprised if anything had changed much before February now.
Okay, I'm going to open up to general Q&A now. I noticed, Francois, you had your hand up at the start. So
yeah, thank you. I'm living on the Lakes Estate, and I'm really, really worried about the estate at the moment. And if you don't know, one of the surgeries has closed. The other one is like half, because it has now joined the West Bletchley. We don't have any pharmacy anymore. We hardly get a shop. It's the only one that remains. It's a kind of derelict place. Everything is closing down, and we are on the extreme end of Milton Keynes. So for us to come out anywhere, we need the bus. And there are lots of people here that have either disabled, disabled or with reduced mobility, and for the same reason don't have smartphones and all the, you know, and for financial reasons cannot afford taking a taxi. So now we are really depending on buses. And so I hear that you want to improve 5 and 6, which is good, because you know that the other one, the one is going to Newton Leys, but unfortunately, in fact, for us, we need more buses towards Newton Leys, because what's going on at the moment, the only closed shop around is the Asda of Newton Leys. Otherwise, we have to walk or go very far. And also, many people from the lakes are now using the community center in Newton Leys for activities in church and leisure activities. And so at the moment, there is not even a path to walk. In fact, we risk our life every day when we go there, because you have to cross into the grass. There is no place. That's not your business, right? But at the same time, the bus at the moment is only the number one. And when it goes to Newton Leys, I've been reporting, and Arriva says, oh, well, you know, no.
Try not to get too hung up on one specific case. I think the general thrust of the question has gone across. I want to try and get a few others in before we finish.
Sorry?
So I try and go. We're trying to move along a bit quicker so we can get a few more questions in.
Short.
I think Simon's got the general point.
We need the number one to go to and to cover the community center and Asda instead of going that short route. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
So that's really interesting and useful. Thank you, because as I said earlier to Alan, we are looking at the possible solution for Newton Lees, and we can take that into account. So thank you for that.
Richard Cousins, you've had your hand up for a while as well.
Yeah, I've got two questions. One of them probably not specifically for Simon. It might be for council, but anyway. First, sort of touching on how you we were talking earlier, how the network will be after a lot of these subsidies reduction. I mean, do you see your operation reducing massively in Milton Keynes? Because obviously most routes in Milton Keynes have some form of subsidy on them at various points of the day.
Well, I wouldn't think it wouldn't reduce at all if we were the successful operator for the DRT contract, of course. But but in terms of the big bus operation, it depends what you mean by massively. I mean, the vast majority of people who use the buses in Milton Keynes do so in the main part of Monday to Saturday on purely commercial bus services, and that will remain the case. So if we looked at it from a number of passengers carried point of view, there wouldn't be a huge amount of impact. Will we run less big bus services? Yes, we will, because tenders won't be there. But the number of people that will affect will be relatively small, of course, although they're important journeys that those people make to them. So we're going to run a bit less, but I'm hoping we're going to run some DRT. So in terms of number of people we employ and number of buses we run, I'm hoping it will be.
I'm probably thinking a little bit personally. Specifically, I live in Woburn Sands, and we have the 301, which is massively subsidised through various things like developer contributions into various bases and subsidies. Just wonder if we could, but anyway, and sorry, the second question isn't really specifically for you, but it might be more of a council thing. I mean, a few years ago, I know Milton Keynes was successful in getting some electric bus funding for one. I think it was the 4. Don't know what happened to that. I don't know. Maybe I missed it. I missed that. I was just wondering, and I don't think it's probably for you, Simon, to be honest. But is that funding ever? Is it going to come back? I don't know. I don't understand that the council was successful in getting money for a new route at the same time as the 7. But obviously the 7's finished now. But then we obviously got nothing now.
I'm not sure. I don't know whether Adele knows.
I came in right on the end of those electric buses as they were being taken out of service, I think. I think in the end they weren't practical for the routes they were running. But as Simon said, it was a really useful experience running them in Milton Keynes. We learned a lot from it as an authority. Certainly, I think the buses are actually still doing something somewhere, though I couldn't tell you exactly where off the top of my head. And they're certainly not running sort of main services in Milton Keynes at the moment.
Those buses have been sat in the Uno depot in Cranfield for about 7 months. They're going nowhere at the moment.
Thank you. We are certainly looking for any opportunity for funding to support the introduction of alternative fuel vehicles in Milton Keynes in cooperation with operators as well as in our own work around DRT. We've been putting in bids whenever those opportunities have come up, and it's not just electric either. There are biodiesel and other fuels out there that we're looking at. So if opportunities come up along those lines, they achieve the same thing, a better environment for us in Milton Keynes. So we'll be keeping an eye on those.
Vanessa, you've had your hand up for a while.
Thank you. Right, yes, I'm unmuted. Hello, Simon. Nice to see you again. I have a few quick things. I'm delighted you mentioned Queensway. I was lobbied by 3 bus drivers recently that they want the 5 to go both ways up Princess Way, Queensway, Fenny, Stratford.
I'm pretty sure it won't.
Not go through Waterheaton Road, because the one that goes one way is very successfully used.
I'm pretty sure we will be doing that.
Right, good. And then if the one didn't go through that particular route but went a different way to Newton Lees or was extended, that would be different. And I agree with what Francois has said about people don't necessarily get the long trip on the one to Newton Lees, but they do go from the Lakes Estate to Newton Lees. So it's fitting that all in. I wanted to ask about your newish drivers. Now, this is going to sound like a complaint. I haven't written down details or anything or emailed you. However, recently I've been on a number of buses every single week because I don't drive. And there've been a few drivers, not ones I recognise at all, I guess they're newish ones, but on Arriva buses, who are using their phones whilst they're driving a bus to make personal phone calls. I'm sure that's not allowed.
Nope.
I've also noticed a couple again of the newer drivers who aren't asking residents when they get on the bus, excuse me, if they've got their mask. So I just think there's a little bit of training needs to go on there.
How recently?
In the past 3-4 weeks.
Okay. So
past month.
it is wrong and I'm not condoning it, but we have had to bring in some temporary drivers in the last 3 or 4 weeks.
Right.
Because we have got some COVID absence, and we've had to send what are classed as clinically extremely vulnerable people back onto furlough to protect them and their health. So my guess would be these are some of the temporary drivers who generally are not always the best bus drivers.
Right.
But leave it with me, and I'll talk to Luke tomorrow, and we'll see what we can do.
Right, thank you. There's also an app issue, but it's to do with the times that the bus drivers themselves have on their bits of paper telling them where they're going and when they're supposed to be there, tying in with the Arriva app, which then has to tie in with the RTPI on bus shelters as well. I'll be raising RTPI a bit later on tonight, but not with yourself. So there are still some hiccups on the app and what it says. And yes, I do agree with Alan about that.
Unfortunately, there are. I can't deny it.
And the last thing I want to say is, as you know, I'm a councillor, shadow cabinet member for transport. I am going to be doing some quiet investigations, nothing to do with Adele at all, about private cars and vans parking in bus bays. They don't, they're not doing any work. People are just parked there. Indeed, one of your drivers lobbied me 2 days ago at Bletchley bus station and said, "Oh, aren't you one of those people?" He meant a councillor. Oh dear, I'm thinking, what have I got to do next?
Famous last words.
Yes. And he got out his phone and he showed me a photo of one of the hospital bus stops, which, as you and I know, are very, very busy bus stops, with a car and a van just parked.
That is quite common. We have a depot Facebook page, and the drivers often put photos at that stop of things in that it shouldn't be there.
So I want to now investigate it behind the scenes at the council, because I don't know what one can do legally, or does it have to be a police issue or a licensing issue? So just to let you know, I am going to look into that matter and I'll keep you posted.
Well, that'd be fantastic. Well, I'm sure the drivers will probably name a bus after you if you get that.
Doesn't mean to say we can solve the problem, but I certainly want to try.
At least someone's picked it up. That's brilliant. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
I just remind, by the way, people who are not currently speaking to turn your cameras off, otherwise the YouTube feed will sort of focus on you when you're in the middle of doing something else. And we have literally 1 minute left if there's any remaining questions, short questions. I see Anthony's hand up. You need to unmute, Anthony. No, you still need to unmute. No, you're still on mute, Anthony.
Unmute. The F77 runs close to Newton Lees. Would that not be a service that could serve? And also Bowbrook Hill Railway Station, could the 8 not be extended to Bowbrook Hill Railway Station? You might need some work done by the council to enable a bus to go in, turn around and come back out onto Brook Hill Street, but it'd be very, very handy for the likes of Wavendon Gate residents.
Are the trains running again?
A few of them.
Well, they're not running, but if we had a bus running, at least I could, if I got there and I wasn't a train, I could then get a bus back.
Yeah.
I wouldn't walk 2 miles to.
The trains are running at peak hours, and there
are
buses in between, but they are going to bring them back soon. It's to do with the signal box workers having to go to other lines.
we were pretending to be trained for a bit on that line. Yes, so I'll have a look at the 8 for you, Anthony, and the F77. Wow, great mind, think alike, eh?
Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Simon. I think that's
No problem.
very useful. And also thank you to Tom and Alan for sort of helping with the dialogue there. I will also make your slides available, Simon, to the participants on the call.
Yeah, that's fine. No problem.
That's
Thank you,
great.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to move on to the last item on the agenda, which is a Q&A with Alan and with Vanessa, who will pick up any questions that you have which have not been covered previously, either under DRT or the bus services, questions that might do with, say, bus shelters or whatever. So Alan, over to you to manage the final Q&A.
Okay, thanks very much, Rebecca. I kind of got a few headings just to try and group questions together. First of all, does anybody have questions on sort of things kind of related to COVID? You know, to be it the the state of the buses, people wearing masks, punctuality, and things like that, which have been obviously dramatically different during COVID to what we were used to before February. Anthony, I see your hand.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm going to have a couple of ones. I was at the railway station. A bus was full because of social distancing. I accepted it was early, but it was just frustrating that he was still sitting there and he wasn't able to let me on. Could he have driven off and waited at the next bus stop?
That's a very operational thing. I can't sort of answer that one. But yes, I mean, there have been one or two cases I've experienced where, a bus didn't stop because it had reached its, quota of passengers under social distance. This was when a lot of the buses were down to only carrying 11 passengers rather than the normal 50 or whatever. And I think they're back up to about 20 something passengers now. Simon, if you could tell us what the current situation is with regard to defining when a bus is full.
So 35 on a double decker, 21 on a full size single decker, 14 on a minibus, something like that. So it is a few more. I mean, unfortunately, lots of things have changed in COVID, but one of the things that hasn't changed is the traffic commissioner's rules on early running. So our drivers won't leave a timing point if they're going to be running early, because it could get us into all kinds of trouble, even when the bus is full. And I accept that is frustrating.
Couldn't we have bus full on the destination blind? So at least I know then. Yeah, because if it's bus full, you can excuse it running early.
I'll double check if it's on there or not. If it's not, we'll get it added. No problem. It's a good idea. Thank you. Yeah. It might be on there. I'm not sure. I'll get it checked. We've definitely got it in Leicester and Derby, but I'll check for Milton Keynes. It's
not on the Milton Keynes RTPI at the moment.
Oh, on the RTPI, or do you mean the front of the bus?
Yeah.
We wouldn't be able to get it on the RTPI screen. But on the front of the bus, we might be able, if we could do it.
I think I have seen it on the front of the buses, occasionally in Milton Keynes. So yeah, you've got that facility, but as you say, not on the RTPIs.
It was on the front of the number 6 in Saxon Street in Bletchley 3 days ago at lunchtime. And it did say bus full. However, it did still stop and let 2 more people on. So the drivers have to remember to take it off again.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's also there are now certain school buses numbered S something or other according to what route. I've seen 1 or 2 of those. Anybody any experience of I mean, obviously they're not for the likes of us, because I don't think there's any of us here that are school age, but has that caused any issues for people?
Alan, sorry, just to say, I'm aware there's a number of hands that are still going on your COVID. I don't know if you can scroll through. Can you scroll through?
I'm not.
Mark Lombardo had his hands up. Then I see Francois.
Okay, thanks for. Okay, yeah, they were on my next page. Yeah, I hadn't got to them. Okay, Mark, then, yeah.
Yeah, mine's just a quick win for us all. When we put the notice about COVID up, can we take them away from the original timetables because they're blocking the timetables? So they're putting the notices about the COVID bus regulations, which is great, but we're putting them over the timetables. So if you're not an RTP stop, you can't see what times the buses are coming.
Unfortunately, the buses mostly are not running to those old timetables, which date from January. So I understand what you're saying about those signs, but even if you take them away, they're not actually going to tell you in many cases when the buses are running, because the timetables have been changing every month or two. But the ones certainly in the shelters that I've used still tend to be the pre-COVID ones, and that don't give you the information that you want either.
Right. Okay.
But yeah,
I just
Francois.
Confirm that yes, some people are boarding the bus without a mask. And also the other question I want to ask is about the timetable, because sometimes I will be waiting and I check the app, the Areva app, it will tell me bus is coming 1 minute, and then the minute will pass, then it will come 10 minutes. So I'm not too sure whether what is the relationship between the app and then the reality.
Yeah, I mean, I think quite a few of us have experienced that. And as Simon said, they're looking into improving the app, making it more accurate. Certainly one of the things I've worked out is that the times of buses that have been loaded into the app are not the same as the times of the buses that are actually running. And so you get peculiar effects where it looks as if your bus is late, but it isn't. It's just that it's got the wrong time that it was expecting it to be there. But so it's very confusing, and I've talked to Simon, and hopefully we're going to get that one sorted out. Anything else on sort of COVID related things? I'm not seeing any other sort of
Richard here. I've got a sort of question about timetables, and I'm not sure if it's COVID related or not really, to be honest. So I mentioned earlier, my local route's the 301. There were changes to that about 18 months ago because of some road works. I'm trying to think where it is. One of these new estates, White House, I think, maybe. Yeah. White House. Road was shut it opened in the summer. However, the timetables remained as it was, and the road reopened probably in August, September time. But you've got this weird situation at the moment on that route, whereas in the evenings the journey times to Stony Stratford are like 75 minutes, but where there's no traffic. In the daytime it's like under an hour. So you've got the buses that are just either running early or waiting time for like 10-15 minutes at locations because the timetable is just not accurate to the service that's been run, especially on evenings, Sundays, all the sort of non-times for. And then I think because it used to be every half an hour, I think north of Milton Keynes, the service to Stony, and it's not an even interval now because it's still running in a blocked road timetable.
Yeah, I'm aware of that. It was the V4. It was when they were building an underpass, and the V4 was closed for, I don't know, best part of a year. Yeah, and as you say, that road reopened 2 or 3 months ago, but maybe that's something we can take up. That's a subsidised service, so that'll be taking up with the council to get the pre-road works timetable reinstated. Because as you
I don't
say,
think it costs any more buses. It's just that it's inefficient, the timetable at the moment. It's exactly the same amount of buses. It's just that the journey times are all over the place.
And that was because of there were estates on either side of those roadworks. Instead of
that's right.
Each bus serving both of those estates, one of the half-hourly buses served one, and the other one the other. But yeah, it could go back to the previous situation. So yeah, we'll take that one up with council. Okay, wanted to quickly move on to issues around things like bus stops and RTPI displays and things like that. I think Vanessa, you wanted to come on this one, yeah.
Well, 2 key issues. Yes, the RTPI, I've already mentioned, it's just not working. For those of you who don't know, the RTPI is the electronic sign telling you when your bus is coming on some bus shelters, and it's just not tying in with the Arriva app or Arriva Real Times. We've mentioned that. There's also a brand new at Bletchley bus station an RTPI board that's got lots and lots of services on it, but the typeface is too small for most older people to read. And I have raised that with the council. I don't know if it can be amended or not. There have been new boards, a new RTPI system put in by the council because the contract ended. So they're now tidying things up, but the board at Bletchley bus station is too small to read. On the bus shelters, I'm working with the head of the environment at Milton Keynes Council to see what we can do to tidy things up. I use the word tidy because did you know that one particular team collect rubbish from inside a bus shelter and a totally different team collect rubbish from outside the bus shelter, just around it, and a totally different team collect rubbish from the litter bin, maybe next to the bus shelter. To me, this is stupid. If they're going to pick up litter, why don't they do the whole lot in one go? We also have certain bits of bus shelters that are done by different departments of the council. So, for example, the light in a bus shelter is linked underground with the nearest street light. So if the street light doesn't work, then the light in the bus shelter doesn't work. And that's all done by highways. Nothing to do with transport, though I know poor Adele and others in her team get blamed for that. And then there's the boards on the bus shelter and which departments deal with those and which deal with those that have advertising on. So as I said, I'm trying to work with the head of the environment to try and smooth these things over and make it easier and quicker. And most important of all, far easier for members of the public to actually report these things to do with bus shelters. I don't know if anybody's got any questions on those two issues.
Mark, I see your hand.
Yeah, okay, let's bring it up. So there's a couple in Newport which I've been advised that have not had lighting in them and etc. Now these bus stops in Newport are as old as the hills, and to find that there's no cabling to the nearest street lamp is the reason why we haven't got the lights in there. We've also got shelters within Newport that have got the lights in but are no longer working. So there is numerous ones within Newport that are in that condition.
Can you kindly send me an email with the specific details of this bus shelter at exactly that location and what the issue is? And then I can take that up for lighting with Highways Department, not transport.
And the other one is the bus shelters within Central Milton Keynes up the top end by John Lewis's. They are getting a bit of a state. They're dilapidated, they're falling apart. And also going on your issue of rubbish being collected from them. There's no rubbish bins in the vicinity of those bus stops up the top end by D3 and all that lot. So they're just thrown onto the ground. Well, when are we looking at getting those bus stops updated so they look reasonable and presentable, and also getting rubbish bins installed up that area?
Right, the rubbish bins is a totally separate issue, and you need to take that up with either your ward councillors for Central Milton Keynes or with the town council for Central Milton Keynes. But Rebecca, you are tied in with that town council, aren't you? Right,
Yes,
so
yes, I am.
perhaps you could look into the issue of litter bins near certain bus shelters. That would be very helpful.
Yes.
Adele, there was a plan. Are you still there, Adele?
I am. I've just had my hand up to say, do you want me to come in on this?
Yes, we haven't got your picture online.
That's all right.
So didn't see your hand. You're not on.
It's late. You don't want to see me after 8 o'clock.
You know about upgrading the bus shelters in Central Milton Keynes.
Yes, I'm working with the head of service of waste on a number of areas around streamlining the services to be more sensible, as Vanessa said. A lot of these things are historic, things are built up over time in separate contracts, and we're going to look to bring a lot of those things together. And there's a big sort of push for a 2023 deadline to refine a lot of these contracts. And I have been working on a proposal with the head of service from waste to look at completely revamping our shelters under a supply and maintain contract, which Simon will be familiar with because it's what happens in Leicester and a number of other major cities. It's not been approved yet, but that's what I'm trying, that's what I'm putting forward as a proposal to upgrade the majority of shelters in Milton Keynes, because I think a lot of our stock on street is very old. We don't make the most of the advertising opportunities because a lot of these companies don't like to advertise on shelters they don't own. So we've ended up with some, fairly random paper adverts rather than anything smart and modern. And the maintenance levels and standards of these sorts of contracts are usually very high.
Adele, I seem to recall that there was some planning money to upgrade the shelters at the theatre stops. Is that still available?
I would have to check with my team on that one specifically, I'm afraid. We get various bits for various bits of work, and we do the best we can with that. But at this point, I think really we need to do a major upgrade across Milton Keynes, and we need to find a way of doing that affordably and with a high quality.
It was still there, Alan, but when it was looked into, it was not enough money. I don't know if the deadline to use that small amount has gone or not, but yes, I'm sure Adele will look into that.
Right. Okay. Okay, we're getting near to the end of the meeting. Is there anything anybody wants to raise urgently that we haven't sort of covered off at some point this evening? I'm trying to. I can see a hand, Anthony. You'll need to unmute yourself.
Yeah, could Milton Keynes move towards, along with the rest of the country, a one card for all transport? Because I've got bus pass, rail card for third off rail, Oyster for London, which is linked to that. Some people have National Express as well. Why could we not have just one document that I take and I get all the privileges and I can load it up with money and I can, then I don't have to carry 3 or 4 documents around with me. I know that's a bit dream, but
yeah. Yes, I think you're basically asking all councils and all bus operators and all train operators to agree on something.
London map. You can do contactless from Reading to Luton Airport Parkway, but you can only use Oyster from West Drayton to Radlett, which excludes people with rail cards.
We have a disintegrated service, I'm afraid, in this country.
It would need national legislation as well to change some of the rules to make it easier.
Okay, I'm not seeing any other hands, so I'm going to end this session and hand back to Rebecca.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I think that was very useful, Alan and Vanessa, for that session. We just have a few more minutes for any other business, so I'm going to see if anyone has any other business. Peter.
I just want to say thank you to all the members and to the committee for the support over the years. I'm sorry that I'm not going to be able to continue through ill health, but I will be there in spirit and keeping my membership, and Barbara will, so we'll keep an eye on you.
Thank you so much, Peter, for everything you've done. And I know you've had a recent setback, but you made a comeback about 6 months ago, and I'm secretly hoping you'll make another comeback. And Barbara, you didn't hear that.
She did.
She did. Oh dear. Okay.
I'll take a beating in a minute.
Okay. Actually, you have reminded me of something I meant to say earlier at the very beginning, which is we are still looking for a new editor for the newsletter. And even if you don't want to be an editor, if you have page layout skills, so if someone else prepares the content, if you have skills in laying out a newsletter, that could be helpful. So if you are willing to volunteer some of your time for that, please send me an email.
Rebecca, I'll take it offline with you.
Okay, great, Mark. Anybody else have, just flipping through the screen here to see for hands? No, I don't see.
Sorry, me again. I don't know if there's anything kind of minor that I could help with at some point, because I'm kind of looking to increase my work, because currently I'm not working, and ideally I'm looking for paid work, but in the meantime, if I get something that's voluntary that I could do a couple of hours a week, it would be helpful.
Great. Well, thank you. I'm sure we can always find some work for sure for volunteers. Thank you for that. I'll get back in touch with you, Anthony. Any other business?
I was just going to say, Rebecca, have you thought about expanding sort of news stuff on the on social media and stuff like that? Because I know years ago I think there was a Twitter handle, I think, wasn't there? I'm not sure actually. I think there may have been, or there may not have been.
Yes, that is something we need to get better at. We have also failed to get our website up and running, although Tom and I keep promising, and social media is a part of that. So the intention is there, but I don't know the skill, the resources exist. So again, if anyone on this call has some skill on social media website, please let me know.
Yeah, again, I'll take that offline with you.
Oh, super. Right. So I don't see anybody else. So thank you so much. I think this has worked very well. Everybody's been really, I said, well behaved in terms of not trying to speak over you and keeping your microphones on mute. And that's really appreciated. And hopefully, I don't know if we'll be able to see each other face to face in the May time frame, but certainly a year from now, I'm hoping we'll all be able to have this AGM face to face again. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and have stay safe, guys, and we'll be in touch again in a few months. Okay.